Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Boys, Season 3, Episodes 1 through 3. Normally I would go on and I would do probably more of these episodes individually and really want to go on and kind of go in depth about them. I think I'm just going to kind of go on in this one and just kind of graze over a lot of the stuff that happens within these episodes and whatever I really remember through any of these as it goes on and pops up and whatever. That's how I'll just kind of approach this one. So within season 1, they really gave us a really great story and then gave us some shock moments and whatever. Season 2, much more focused on like the boys 7, and like there wasn't, I think, as much story, but there was a lot more shock value and gore. Like especially when we go on and we like blast that whale and all the boys are getting sprayed with whale guts and whatever. So we go on, and in season 3 we have it to be much more, there's like little stories here and there that can interest us, but I feel like this show even more so is relying on shock value and is relying on little things to have us go, whoa, what a great show, rather than us like really relying on like the story as a whole anymore. So I like the show, but I would go on and say like the early seasons were so much better, but it is what it is now. So for those of you that were to go on into this show just to want to know, like, because you're big Jensen Ackles fans, and a lot of people probably just want to tune into this show just because of Jensen, really, he's not all that often used within these first 3 episodes. You get more of him being referenced than he's actually to be used. And so I'm like, okay, that's a little goofy. We go on and have him being used mainly in some kind of clip that makes him feel very much like Captain America in a lot of ways in this show, if he wasn't already like the Captain America character. Like, we really showcase in this show that this guy is a copy and pasting of Captain America. And so that's great and all, but like this character is rarely used. If anything, we actually have Laurie Holden, who is actually from The Walking Dead, who had played Adrian, that is to be used a lot more within this show. And I think that they should have actually been promoting that all along rather than Jensen Ackles being so much in the show. Because then everybody was thinking that like Jensen Ackles is going to be in this whole show, and eventually some people may be heavily disappointed because it's like, dude, I had to watch like 2 seasons of the show. I had to go on and eventually come on here to just see Jensen Ackles barely being used. Like, I only watched this show because Jensen was on this, and then a lot of people just feel disappointed, and I can understand that. So, but if anybody else who could care less regardless and were going to watch this show for whatever they were going to give us anyways, yeah, gotta say, really like what they're doing with Huey and his new partner, who is actually Victoria Newman, who we find out is to have a possible superpower within the show. And eventually, if you've seen the episodes, you know what I'm talking about. Really, other than that, like, I can just kind of take and give what they give us. Like, at some points, this does somewhat feel like Legion Season 3, or Legion Season 2. Yeah. Where it seems like there's going to be some more singing and dancing and weird, goofy stuff. Then I'm like, wow, they just really need to just eat up time. They just need to eat up that time. I don't know why, but they have to just really just scarf down that time within the show. And kind of disappointing, but anyways, like, it is what it is with the show. So, and also we have Hugh Campbell, who is like Simon Pegg, who he's used in this first episode as like a Skype call, just like, hey, how's it going? And then goodbye. And I'm like, we seriously had to get this guy all suited up and whatever for him to be used in a Skype call and then like, see you later, bye. Like, if you're not actually gonna use him in the show, why bother? Just like, I get like wanting to just have characters on this show somehow or another, but like, what a waste of time that was, just through a Skype call as this little goofy little thing. But it just, man. So with that said, I really like, I think the fun part too is Homelander really torturing a lot of his 7 members within these episodes, really going on and having Homelander like having everybody again just kind of be walking on eggshells when they're forcibly having to team up with him is a really fun thing, because we kind of got that in season 1 and then it kind of went away because there was other things going on. And now it seems like in season 3 they have brought that back, and we really have it to where Homelander is sticking it to a lot of characters, and that's fun and all. And so like, we'll kind of see eventually how Homelander is to finally just go on and be like, you know what, like, I'm through with eventually Stormfront or Starlight trying to take my light. I'm gonna freaking take it back. Like, I'm gonna showcase that there's always been one leader of this team, and it's gonna be me. And plus, also, we just have Homelander, who has this I don't give a attitude, where instead of him just going on and saving all these people and kind of just going off, instead he is kind of marinating and taking the time to really kind of hear people's plight, but then to also just chime in and say, it's like, well, yeah, your life might be bad, but mine is worse. So, like, you want to go on and you want to whine and complain about your life, but like I've never really had a birthday. Like, I've never really like had a real legitimate life besides the one that was like made up for me. So, like, how about you go on and you go and do like what you were going to do, and I'll just walk away. Like, that moment was like, oh my god, that was so cool. But then again, I was like, man, that kind of sends a bad message, but still, like, how about some follow through? It was probably just like, oh my god. I laughed at that moment, even though it was like a horrible moment, but still, I laughed. I was like, man, there were certain points in this show where I just laughed. It was a good chuckle. For some of these things where I'm like, man, this was cool. Oh, this was funny. How we go on and also have someone who is to be a normal human that is to finally get superpowers within this season. Of course, the trailer could immediately tell you what's going on with that. And also how we're starting to see that there is to be a mental breakdown with certain characters, or there's been certain people just kind of holding back grudges, so to speak, to the point where we're probably going to see a lot more characters at some point just effing explode. Where I'm starting to possibly see certain characters that have really been swallowing some things for a very long time. And it'll be cool to see where certain characters possibly finish up throughout this season. Especially characters like Starfire, especially when we get towards the end of these 3 episodes. I'm like, oh my god, somebody's getting ticked. Let's see what happens with this. And plus, it's also really interesting that Starfire is to be this kind of very religious person, but then she's kind of turned around and said that it's like, oh yeah, well I slept with this guy and I've done this and I've done all that. It's like, yeah, I'm very religious, but I've done all this stuff. And then Huey's like, oh my god, like, okay, so like she wasn't saving herself for you, Huey. Sorry, but yeah, so yeah, so eventually I've kind of gone in a little bit on this season. So let's go in and talk about these episodes, kind of hash them out for the most point. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into that double 5 time territory. Let's just go into, of course, what is to eventually be spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time to spoil this episode. Really, this show, of course, is available on Amazon. If you like, everybody should probably have Amazon probably at this point. If you don't have it, there's a number of different reviews that I've gone through recently that will also give you a number of apps to dare in fact bootleg this show. Go on and hopefully be able to see it for absolutely free if you don't have the affordability to have a Amazon account for whatever reason. So with that said, let's get into hopefully spoilers about most of these episodes. It may not be perfect. It will probably just be what it is because it's 3 episodes of coverage all smashed into one review. So for episode 1, we go on and immediately think that there is an actual happening scene, and then we end up getting a thing instead where we're like, oh, this is another one of those kinds of scenes that is to be put in the very start of the episode that is to make us think that this is really all going on, but instead it's to be some scene from another film. Because we go on and we have Homelander that is talking to a Stormfront who is Charlize Theron. And I was like, oh my god, like, Charlize Theron, man, is she, like, really dipping into all these, like, superhero movies and shows lately? She's kind of, like, everywhere in these little bits and parts and whatever, and it's so fun to just kind of see, like, where she's going to be in next, as she's gone on and done all those, like, perfume commercials, and now I guess she's going on and doing these little superhero things, like, briefly, but still. So Homelander is trying to convince this Stormfront to just say, like, well, hey, like, I've had feelings for you, and like come to my side kind of thing. And Stormfront is just like, well, like, I would love to, but my heart is with me being involved with Nazis and so on and so forth, the Fourth Reich and all this stuff. So we have it to where Homelander and every single member of the 7 are to have to combine their powers together to supposedly defeat Stormfront here. And so Homelander is watching this movie, and we have Stan Edgar that is watching on as Homelander is watching this film, and the whole entire time we have Homelander having this kind of like buzzing in his ears, where we could assess that maybe somehow or another that this is to be possibly the anger brewing in maybe these soups, or it could just be possibly some kind of light that is to be switched on for these characters that like are really just kind of to be a possible moment when there's a build of something going on here. We don't know. Not really quite sure yet. So, transition to that. So, we find out that this was a movie called Dawn of the Seven, if we haven't had, like, Dawn of the Justice League, because really we have to go on and have this be a rip on the 7 of Justice League and all this kind of stuff. So, we have it to where, of course, Adam Bork is to have been the writer for this movie, and he is turning around and going on with Ashley, who of course is the PR girl for the Seven. Like both of them are just kind of banging it out in this bathroom, and I was like, oh, so they're putting them together. If they hadn't put them together in the past, from what I remember, but both of them were in this bathroom together, and so Huey is on the red carpet with Starlight and being very uncomfortable right next to Homelander. Come to find out, Huey and the rest of the boys are all tied to the CIA to the point of they get their own little private headquarters where they're to try to go on and still try to police the Supes and try to do their own investigations at some point. So, considering these guys aren't at each other's throats, both the Seven and the boys, because technically now the boys are CIA members, we have it to where kind of Homelander and Huey are kind of just chatting it up, but it's just very awkward and uncomfortable. So Huey is to go on and go into this bathroom, and eventually we find out that Huey is to be involved in the CIA, and he is to have this partner named Victoria Newman, who will find out is to also have superpowers, and eventually is to have her own alternate identity. As we go on and we have a man who is coming to the CIA and is going on and asking for a girl named Nadia, and we of course have Huey who's going on and saying Nadia, who are you talking about? And so we go on and have it where Huey is to hear this name and eventually is to tell Newman about it at some point. And so come to find out, Newman is to take this guy aside and is to talk to him. And so while they're talking together, she ends up going on and using her superpowers because he starts to attack her. She uses her superpowers to explode his jaw and explode his eye and kill him. And so Huey is to realize that he's been working with the head popper the whole entire time. The person who had gone on and killed numerous amounts of people within that whole point when Huey was in that trial, was in that courtroom, and there was a number of people getting killed. That was because of this woman going on and killing all these people off. So eventually Huey is to realize he's been working with this woman the whole time, and so eventually he's going to go on and tell the Butcher about all this. So here's where the boys technically are right now. We have Mother's Milk, who was to go on his own, and eventually he will be re-added back into the boys, just because he is having some problems being able to just let go from these cases and stuff like that. It's all just kind of brought him right back to the fold. And so, but we'll get to that. So we have, of course, where we have the Butcher that is to want to just kind of kill off all these Supes, and Huey is telling him not to. We have Huey that again is being, of course, the Butcher's Jiminy Cricket, and consistently wanting to tell him, it's like, hey, just bring him in. Do not kill him. Or do not kill this person. Do not kill this Supe. So we go on and we have the Butcher, Frenchie, and Kimiko that is to go on to this party. And so come to find out, we we have a Supe who is to be called Termite, that is to be like a very Ant-Man-esque like character. So we have Termite, who is in this Barbie house doll, and he's humping away this one doll, kind of making this to be this joke. And this guy is to consistently like reform, and he's to not have any clothes on. So you're basically just seeing his twig and berries just dangling into the wind. So kind of like how in the first season we had the one guy who was to be consistently like invisible, uh, translucent. Yeah. So we kind of get that kind of character here. So we all of a sudden have Termite, who is taking quite a bit of coke and is to go on with his lover into this room. And so we go on and have like Frenchie and the butcher, and we have Kimiko that is kind of following this guy. But we also have Kimiko that is to go in this room to realize there is to be this girl who is playing this piano, and Kimiko is to look like she's singing. I'm like, oh wow, like Kimiko really sounds good singing, but I really don't want this to be a heavy part of the show. Because if I've had problems with Superman and Lois where people are singing and dancing and whatever, like again, I will say to the heavens, I don't go to a comic book superhero show to see people singing and dancing. Like I had a goofy enough problems with that with Spider-Man 3, even though I can still enjoy that film. Really, like there was a lot of other things going on than just singing and dancing. But so we have Kimiko, who's interested in music, and so like that gives that character a little bit more depth. And also, it seems like her and Frenchie are kind of having some fun things to do within these episodes, even though really it kind of feels like filler a lot, for like Frenchie to kind of meet up with people of his past, and also Kimiko to want to go on and trying to relive her youth because she never really had a youth. So she's going on and like going to Six Flags or Votland and all these kind of goofy things. But we'll get to that eventually. So back to Termite. Termite is to go on and be with his lover. And so this guy is to basically pop his wang right onto this table and just have Termite walk his way through into this guy's wang. And I am just like speechless at this point, just like, really? Like this is what we're doing with the show. I guess to try to be different, but again, when really looking at it, look at the whole Ant-Man Thanos meme, and really, like, that had to be a whole thing, so I guess we're technically doing something quasi-similar here in this show. So, we go on, and we have this guy who is basically massaging the inside of this guy's body, and so we accidentally have Termite, the guy inside the guy, sneezing, and when all of a sudden he sneezes, he turns back into regular size, exploding this guy and tearing through this man. And so now we just have the carcass of this man. And so now we have the butcher and the boys break their way through this room. And now Frenchie is to be the first one on the scene, and this guy is just beating the crap out of Frenchie, taking him down, and we have it to where Frenchie is realizing that the termite is to try to go into Frenchie's body, and so Kimiko is trying to like whip open Frenchie's pants to like help try to retrieve this guy. But then all of a sudden, Termite is taking down Kimiko. And so we get where the butcher is to go on and take this bag of coke and to scoop up Termite, and it's to dump him on this table. And so now Termite is in this kind of very coke high, and the butcher is just so tempted to just squash this guy to kill him off because he's so small anyways and no one will remember like where he is. But then again, the butcher is hearing, of course, like Huey, like in his brain, kind of telling him it's like, no, we can't go on and do that. Like, let's just go on and arrest this guy. And so Huey goes on and is to arrest him, even though like Frenchie is to say, like, dude, like after he had gone on and tried to kill both of us, like you're just gonna let this slide. And the butcher is like, well, like you have Jiminy Cricket to thank for that. You have like Huey to thank for that. So we go on and we have them arrest Termite and bring him in. So we go further into this story, and we have both Stan Edgar, and we have Robert Singer. And so Stan Edgar, who of course is the new controller of Vought now from the past season, he's coming in here and he's trying to sell Compound V as a possible drug to give soldiers superpowers. To, of course, Robert Singer, he's trying to sell it to him. And so we're going on, and like Robert Singer is kind of back and forthing about this, like considering we've had a number of superheroes who are kind of born off of this, like how is it going to affect like the common man and stuff like that? Like, won't there be side effects? And like Robert Singer is just kind of like, I don't know. But we have Stan Edgar that wants to kind of figure out a way to just kind of like buy his way out of here, simply because he doesn't know like how much longer he can go on and like kind of babysit all of these seven. And if there's just a way for there be like a changing of tide to where all of a sudden like a person can have superpowers and kind of take over control over the seven, then eventually Edgar is to really sell the fact it's like, well, hey, like Robert Singer, think of it this way, like you'll have people with temporary powers, so like you'll be able to control them a lot more than you would the seven, where the seven have powers all the time. And they're thinking that they're like the next stage of evolution and so on and so forth. So that's kind of like the selling point where Robert Singer is just kind of like, you know what, I'm kind of just back and forthing about this. I don't know. But we have it to where Maeve is to eventually find out about the Compound V. And so Maeve was to be the one to give the butcher intel about Termite, and because she's really been going on and helping the boys even more so, kind of without anybody knowing, so that way like she can go on and like try to do the right thing here because of kind of what is all had happened with her life, especially in the last season, where like she lost like she was to lose the love of her life, and like everything was to eventually start to weigh on her, all the like the decisions that other people were making via the seven and everything like that. So Maeve is to go on and give the butcher like the compound V, and we have the butcher that is to go on and want to dump the Compound V out in the sink. Then he's like, like maybe I'll need this at some point. Maybe I'm gonna go on and maybe it's good to just kind of keep this in the cookie jar. So as the butcher is going on and putting this in the cookie jar, he's consistently looking at it. He's tempted by it. As well as the Butcher, like, slowly but surely losing his frickin' mind. We go on and have at some point in these 3 episodes, the Butcher is to have Homelander just show up at his place, and having Homelander want to know where his son is, who is to actually be Ryan. Because, of course, like, from where Ryan was before, he's in a completely different location, which is just really him being just tied to Grace Mallory, who was to be Butcher's go-to person as far as information and stuff like that, where eventually Butcher can rely on Grace for pieces here and there for stuff that he needs to know. So come to find out, we have Homelander and we of course have the Butcher talking to one another, sitting down within this first episode and just kind of talking things out. And then come to find out, like, Homelander just disappears, and we're immediately assuming that the Butcher is to go on and lose his mind, that none of this stuff was really real. Especially once we go on into a later episode where all of a sudden Homelander is on TV and he's talking directly to the Butcher, like kind of talking to him and mentioning things. And so, and plus all of this is to remind the Butcher about his wife being killed, and is to torture him about that. So again, consistently giving the Butcher like this temptation to look at that cookie jar and just be like, I definitely want to go on and I want to just take out Homelander. Because we go on and we have the Butcher who is meeting up with Ryan, like actual Ryan, in the hideout place that he is to be kept. And so Ryan is saying that he's having nightmares, that possibly at some point Homelander is going to come for him and kill him. And so we have to where the Butcher is trying to convince Ryan, it's like, well, hey, like, everything will be okay. At some point, you're going to go on and you're going to have a lot of powers, and you're going to even be more powerful than Homelander is, and you're going to be able to easily choose whether you want to take him out or not. So, like, hey, kid, just think of that. Just think that you're going to eventually have more power than Homelander will, and you'll be okay. So we also are to go on and find out that Starfire is weirdly going on and doing some reality show called American Heroes within the season. And so we go on and we have a number of like candidates left. So this is kind of like Who Wants to Be a Superhero, kind of like that Stan Lee show, where I think we had like Feedback and like some other kind of superheroes that were kind of left at the end of that show. I think there was like 2 seasons of it that Stan Lee ended up doing, where he was kind of like the host of that whole show. So we go on and we have Starlight that is hosting this show, and it really seems that people are to love Starlight much more so than any of the rest of the group. So Starlight is to be down to like 3 different superheroes, where it's mainly to focus on one of them called Supersonic, this past boy bander turned to eventually be this superhero that we're not even sure what exactly his powers are. Eventually, I'm hoping that they'll be showcased at some point. I'm assuming Supersonic probably has, like, maybe it's a Black Canary kind of character, where we just have him, like, kind of do this kind of scream or something like that. That would make sense for possibly him having a singing background. So But yeah, so it seems that Starlight and Supersonic were to have had a past together where Starlight had lost her virginity to, uh, of course, Supersonic, and eventually Huey is to kind of put his arm around, uh, of course, Starlight's shoulder, and is getting a little jealous that, considering both of them have technically had a past together, Huey's like, oh my god, like, I have to figure out how I can go on and keep winning this woman over. After we've gone on and had certain sessions where I'm to go on and uh, like put some Listerine or whatever goofy thing, some Aquafina or whatever in my mouth, and then them go on and kiss one another and make out with one another, and so on and so forth within the show. So we go on, and so it gets down to the last three characters within the show, and we have like really them wanting to pick a certain superhero, obviously, and like the other two characters are like, well, like this girl looks good looking and she's bangable, but like that's the only reason why we're having her on the show. And the other character, like she just has a really good like record, but like I can't really see us like really hiring this kind of superhero. And so we go on and we have Starlight that's like, no, like uh you should obviously be picking this one girl. You should obviously be picking um the uh the one girl who has the best record, instead of the girl that is or instead of the guy that is to just be like good looking and whatever. Anyways, we'll get to that more in other episodes, probably a little bit more. But anyways, so we go on, and so what else is kind of left to cover within the show? Because I think I've kind of gone through kind of some of the stuff from episode one, as it's kind of like scattered about within the show. So we of course are to go into episode 2, and we have it, of course, where the Deep is to start to be pushed back into the 7, as well as A-Train wanting to go on and now market himself as a guy that can be like tied much more to Africa, and A-Train wants to get back to his roots of things, and he's trying to sell to Ashley that he wants to go on and completely change his outfit to have a much more like African color scheme within his outfit. And Ashley is going on and saying, no, like, we don't want you to do anything like that. Like we feel like what you're doing right now is just fine. And A-Train is to take it upon himself to redesign his costume to have this much more different color scheme, which eventually is to have A-Train tying with his brother, and is to give us an update on A-Train's power, where A-Train can no longer use his power. And so we have his brother going on of like, well, hey, how about you just like come back with me? Like, we'll just come on and chill back at my place, and we'll just kind of talk things out. And so when A-Train is to make his way back home with his family, we, of course, have them going on and saying like, man, like what you're doing is like stupid, like you're going on and having this color scheme, and A Train's like, well, no, there's a whole reason behind that, and they're going on like, well, whatever it is, like it looks goofy as f, and so A Train's like, yeah, it's something different. So, uh, so A Train is to give us an update that he can possibly use his powers once, and they might work fine, or eventually A Train may go on and use his power and eventually have a heart attack and die. So A Train is to really be at a point where he needs to not go on and use these powers, and so that's where he's just kind of like, well, he's on the 7, but he's basically just a guy that's just on the poster. That's all he can really be at this point. Power. So, also one thing I forgot about is Mother's Milk. So, Mother's Milk, we find out, is to be put into the life of his wife, who is Monica, and his wife. So we go on and have it, of course, where Mother's Milk is to go to this birthday party of his daughter's, and come to find out, like, we are to think that Mother's Milk is to be good with his wife and his kid again, but come to find out, it seems like his wife had replaced him, and I'm like, ooh, yikes. So we really just go on and have, like, Mother's Milk, who's kind of getting away from this photo so they can have their family photo. We also have the birthday theme of Janine, that is this like superhero theme, and so Monique is really just telling Mother's Milk, well, hey, I'm sorry, but like this is the theme that this girl wanted, so this is what we were going with. And so Mother Milk is just like, well, that's fine, like I'm okay with it. So at one point we go on and we have Mother's Milk that ends up getting some intel from I think the butcher, to like, hey man, are you gonna go on and be part of the boys again? Like, here's some intel that we have about the soldier boy, and that he might still be alive somehow. And so all of a sudden, Mother's Milk is to have all of these pieces of papers all scattered throughout this room, and then he is to rush out because his daughter is telling him that there's something burning on the oven. Mother's Milk is to scramble to go on and try to fan the flames upon this food within this pan, and then he's to smack down this fire alarm, and he breaks it because it's continuously going off, to the point of really Mother's Milk just being so very like upset about all this. And we have it to where Mother's Milk's daughter Janine is a little scared of him. So Mother's Milk is to go on and tell Monique that he needs to go on and go back with the boys. Like, he is to have some tics and some problems. Things are kind of coming back to the surface. And so Monique is just kind of letting him go. So Mother's Milk is to get back within the team, and so we have it at one point where Huey is to go on and is to take this can and try to open it, and he can, and he keeps smacking it against his counter to the point of this little can breaking, and then he cuts his hand. And so he then goes on and is to meet with Mother's Milk and all this team again, and we have like Mother's Milk who's giving Huey a like, hey, like, what are you doing? Are you jerking too hard? And so we go on and have Huey going on and like, no, like, you should see the other guy. The other guy's my dad. And so it's like, yeah, just making these like kind of jerking off jokes. So, like, I thought that was really funny. Um, so we have it to where consistently Huey is trying to get away from Newman, because eventually Huey is to tell Butcher about Newman and how she's the head popper, and that he needs to come up with consistent injuries to kind of be able to get out of the office, and to the point where Huey is to tell these guys, hey, break my arm, so I'll be injured for a long time and I'll be in legit pain. And so we have Kimiko that ends up breaking Huey's arm, so that way he'll have this injury look legit. So we go on, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on also. So we have Frenchie and we have Kimiko that go on to Votland. They go on to Votland to re-meet up with a superhero called Crimson Countess. And this seems to be a girl when she ends up putting her hands together like this, and in kind of a diamond way, she can kind of push this fireball out and kill some people. So we have Frenchie and Kimiko making it to Votland, and they meet up with this Crimson Countess, and it seems that she is to go on to be this singer, and it seems that Crimson is to go on and sing this song when Frenchie and Kimiko are to be in this kind of private backstage room about Chimps Don't Cry, and how like Crimson is to go on and say like, yeah, like legitimately chimpanzees cannot cry. And so it's like, okay, this is so odd. And Frenchie's going on and saying like, seriously, like I'm back here listening to this garbage. So, but this all leads to like Frenchie and Kimiko like revealing like who they really are, and chase ensues after like both Frenchie and Kimiko have gone through like Vaultland and are going through this ride to eventually showcase things of the past of Soldier Boy going on and doing this speech, trying to go on and sell things and so on and so forth, and doing this long stretch of a speech. So we go on and we have Crimson, who is to use this blast, and she might be rusty at it, to where she goes on and murders one of these Homelander mascots. And so we have Frenchie and Kimiko running after this girl, but eventually, like, she runs off. And so we also go on and have the Deep, who is to be back in the good graces and is to be close to be returning back to the Seven, because the Deep had released this book called Deeper, and to the point to where this book is to have gone so well that he all of a sudden is to make a based on book movie. But come to find out, we have it to where the Deep is to have had some Shia LaBeouf ghostwriter go on and do this book. And we have it to where in the second episode, Billy Zane is going on and being like the technical villain of the Deep's movie. And I was like, oh my god, Billy Zane, the Phantom! Like, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Because I was so jazzed. I'm like, oh my god, that's Billy Zane, that's a freaking Phantom. And he was also on like Titanic and like all these other things. But I was like, freaking Billy Zane, this is great. So yeah, so we have this kind of like bizarre movie that the Deep is in, that it doesn't really make much of any like real sense, like the movie. And I just thought that was so like bizarre. We have this like very generic movie trailer that is to be done for the movie Deeper. And so yeah, I just thought it was just very odd. So we go on and we have the Butcher that is to make his way to find the sidekick of Soldier Boy. and he is to go through this like NRA convention. And when he goes through this metal detector, we have Butcher who's to whip out his gun, and the guy is like, "Oh, hey, nice piece," and then he like lets him just walk through, and the Butcher's like, "Okay, this is weird." So the Butcher goes through this conference and is to eventually see the speech that Gunpowder is to make. And I'm like, oh my god, this is the guy from Boondock Saints, Sean Patrick Flannery. I went on and I saw him on God, what was that movie, like Champion of the World or something like that, with him and like Dennis Quaid, and like I think it was like based on a true story. And I was like, man, like this is really cool to kind of have Sean Patrick like in this film, because I remember him, of course, of like Boondock Saints. So I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And he has this kind of like Magneto kind of like design upon him. Um, but any other episode past this, you're kind of seeing a younger variation of Gunpowder. So we go on and we have the Butcher that is watching this guy go on and try to sell these guns as if he's like Captain America from the past, trying to sell these like bail bonds and whatever. So we have Gunpowder going on and trying to sell these guns, making a speech about like carrying guns and all these things. So Gunpowder is to go to this bathroom, the Butcher is to follow him there. And so we have it to where they're both whipping it out at this bathroom, in this bathroom, like urinals. And so the Butcher is going on and saying like, "Hey man, like I'm a big fan from the past days of you and Soldier Boy, and I would really want to go on and shake your hand, but you know, like, like we're both just kind of holding it out." And Gunpowder is like, "Yeah, I'd really appreciate it if we just don't." So we have to where Gunpowder goes on and is to zip up and then is to kind of wipe his hands. So we have the Butcher who goes on and just kind of wipes his hands on his freaking coat. And then we have the Butcher who's talking to Gunpowder and referencing how Soldier Boy used to go on and take advantage of Gunpowder, and as he was a young kid, and consistently try and take advantage of him and seduce him and whatever. And Gunpowder is trying to force this all off as if it's not really true. And we have it to where the Butcher is to go on and have this like this kind of sworn statement about all this. And so the Gunpowder is to want to go on and say like, man, like I really would just want to just kill this guy right now. So Gunpowder is to go off into this parking garage, and eventually the Butcher is to make it to his car, and then all of a sudden he's under fire by Gunpowder. So there's kind of this chase around where I'm like, oh my god, like Gunpowder is technically like God, what is it? He's kind of like the Will Smith character from Suicide Squad. I want to say it's like Deathlock or something like that. It's it'll probably come to me eventually because I've seen that film. Like he's kind of like a Captain Boomerang, or a character that is to be like deathly accurate with bullets. It would be kind of like the Wanted movie with where it's like a curved bullet kind of thing or whatever. But in this case, we have Gunpowder who is to ricochet this bullet, and it goes in and like grazes the Butcher in the face. So we have it, of course, where the Butcher is to also end up getting shot in the leg, and he's bleeding out. And so when Gunpowder is to trace where exactly the Butcher is now gone. So we have it, of course, where Butcher is kind of tying up his wounds, and is wanting to call Huey, and he's wanting to tell Huey, it's like, well, you know what, everything that you said, like, you were right on about what you were doing. And then Huey kind of turns around and tells Butcher about his partner. And so the Butcher is just like, okay, well, I think I need to go on. And I need to realize that I need to start taking Compound V to start going after these guys. So we have a second round of Gunpowder going after the Butcher, but this time around we have the Butcher who's getting some bullets like being pounded upon his body, and we're now thinking the Butcher is dead. I'm like, oh no, like what a way to end the show somehow. But then all of a sudden the Butcher ends up ending up getting up, and he is to just kind of wipe these bullets off his body. And come to find out, we now realize that the Butcher is to use Compound V and is now using his superpowers to just take down Gunpowder by basically just pounding him to death, having him like break and spit out all these teeth, and we're having the Butcher that is just beating Gunpowder to death, and Gunpowder is to go on and kind of confess things and try to talk, but then the Butcher is to go on and like have his heat vision just kind of slice through Gunpowder's head, killing not only him but then the car next to him. And then we just have it to where like the Butcher is losing control of this heat vision, these laser beams, and so like he can't stop making them from like coming out, as if he's kind of like Cyclops, where like it's very hard to maintain this. So Gunpowder is now dead, this character that we like really didn't have much of use for besides flashbacks now. So we have that being dipped into here. We also have this being Homelander's birthday within this episode. So this is Homelander's birthday, and so he's making this whole big deal about this being his birthday, and so we have this whole TV special being done for this, and so we have Stan Edgar, who is going to put Starlight aside and Homelander aside, telling him like, hey, like Starlight is much more popular than anybody else, so we're gonna co-captain you guys together. And Starlight, you have to decide whether or not you want to be a co-captain of this team. And so Starlight is eventually going to ask Huey like about this and like, well, should I, shouldn't I, like what should I do here? So we have it to where Starlight is to think that if she could be the co-captain, she can like maybe have way more control than what she had been. Maybe she can kind of eventually have more weight to throw around, but really like we're gonna find out that Homelander is to go on and be like, no, like I'm still the leader of this team, no matter what you do and what you say. Like I'm the guy. There's nothing you're gonna be able to do. So we have Starlight that is to still like want to throw her weight around, and Homelander is at some points trying to make Starlight look bad, but like it's really like nothing that Homelander is probably going to do is also going to work, because Stan is to start to also like take control of what either Starlight is doing or Homelander is doing to kind of have his own say. So we have it at Homelander's birthday party where Starlight is to go on and mention about this charity, and that she's also going to have to sing Homelander happy birthday, because Homelander is to want to go on and basically degrade his team members. We have Homelander at one point ridiculing A-Train for packing on the pounds, and A-Train is like, well, yeah, like, I have to go on and have a certain number of calories because I usually burn through them. And Homelander is like, well, yeah, like, when you had superpowers and you had super speed, yeah, like you can go on and eat to the heavens and burn that all off. But now, like you're really packing on the pounds, so come on, like kind of get to working. Like come on, like like contain your figure. To the point where later on we have it to where like A Train is now wearing this girdle, and Homelander is ridiculing him for that. Like, hey, like I can see your girdle, fatty. Like, come on. I'm like, oh my god, this is awful. But not only that, Homelander is to also force A Train to eat all this seafood, or making Homelander is making the Deep go on and eat all this seafood right in front of him, and we have it at one point where the Deep is sleeping with his woman, but also thinking about this octopus the whole entire time as he's doing it. So we forcibly have Homelander that is making the Deep eat this octopus that, of course, the Deep knows by Timothy, and we have the Deep's wife that is telling him to eat this octopus and eat this crab, and the Deep's like breaking off, or the Homelander is breaking off this lobster for the Deep to put on his plate and have him eat all this, and the Deep is like, I think I'll just have some bread. And Homelander's like, no, like, you need to go on and eat all this stuff. And, like, I'm just going to make you eat all. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just, wow. This is, like, so vicious. So we have Homelander going on and wanting Starlight to sing Happy Birthday like Marilyn Monroe. And Starlight's like, no. Like, I'm not going to do that. Because all of a sudden we have a lineup of women all behind her. They're wearing these, like, scantily, like, clothed parts. And they look just like the girls from Iron Man 2, where we have the Stark Expo, and all the girls are lining up with all their lights and, like, trying to be like Iron Man and whatever. And Starlight's like, no, like, I'm not going to sing Happy Birthday like Marilyn Monroe and have all these girls lined up for me. Like, this is very, like, sexualized, and I know, like, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. And so Stan Edgar chimes in and is like, well, if Starlight doesn't want to do this, then we're not doing it because she's the most popular. She's the most popular of the seven, so, like, what she says goes. So we go on and we have Homelander who goes into this birthday celebration. And so, come to find out, Homelander is to go and save a girl who wants to be on this ledge, who's thinking about jumping off. And so we have Homelander that is telling this girl, hey, like, congratulations to you because you're my birthday save for the day. And this girl is going to, like, say, okay, like, this is kind of weird. So Homelander is going on and asking this girl, like, why she is to go on and contemplate, like, doing this. And he is to start to chime in and say, it's like, well, hey, like, I don't even have a real birthday. Like, they just kind of made this up for what my birthday actually was. Like, really, it's all just been, like, one big, like, made-up thing. And so Homelander is to go on, and as he's continuing to talk to this girl who's Chelsea, he's more and more just starting to realize, it's like, well, hey, like, you know what, Chelsea? It's like, why don't you just go on and do what you were going to do? And the girl's like, well, maybe I'm having second thoughts about that. And Homelander's like, well, like, where's your follow through? Like, come on, Chelsea. It's like, you were tempted to want to go on and do this. So, like, why don't you just go on? And so Chelsea, all of a sudden, we just see someone fall from this building. And everybody's like, oh my God. And so Homelander just kind of walks off because he is to all of a sudden see on this big screen television that Stormfront had committed a self-death upon herself because we have it to where Stormfront is still being held alive within these machines, and we have it at points where Homelander is to go on and see her, and at some point he is to get a hand job from her at some points, and is to go on and have them, like, at some points they talk to one another, but on Homelander's actual birthday, when he's like, well, hey, aren't you gonna wish me like a happy birthday, and she ends up saying exactly nothing. We have Homelander that's just like, I guess this is just my life. So we go on and we have Stormfront who is to die, and now everybody's like, oh my god, like, this girl was to pull $1 million baby, like Ashley used to say that, the PR person. And so now we go on and we just have it where Homelander is just distraught by Stormfront getting killed. And then when we go on to the birthday bash where he's on TV and Stormfront is talking about this charity and how much money that Homefront is eventually going to drop $10 million into Starlight's charity. We have somebody mention Stormfront and how she had died, and how like Homelander, like, hey, your Nazi girl died. And finally, we just have Homelander that is to break his silence and is to finally go on and say, it's like, well, hey, like, throughout my whole entire life, I've been controlled by Vought. And, like, if I've been controlled by all this, someday you will too. And so, Homelander, after doing this whole speech, and finally being honest with everybody, everybody's like, oh my god, like, this guy went on and really told us everything. All of a sudden, we find out that Homelander, like, this is like big, huge breaking news. And all of a sudden, Ashley is to run to Homelander, telling him, like, oh my god, you're you're popular again. Like, you've jumped up like quite a bit of points. Yeah, there's still certain suburban areas that don't like you as much now, but still, like, you're popular again. And all you have to do is go on and team up with Starlight, and, like, you'll have unstoppable numbers. And we go on and have Homelander. There's like, just like, really, like, people like me even more now for being honest. So we have Homelander even now more so than before, like, saying, like, yeah, like, I've gotten my second wind back, so now I'm gonna go on and just keep doing what I'm doing. So we go on and we have, for the American heroes, where there's a number of characters that are to possibly be set up to eventually win this show. And so we eventually have it, of course, where they want to go with Supersonic, and to the point where, of course, we have Starlight telling Supersonic, don't go with this team. Don't do this. Like, try to tell him that you don't want to go and be on this team. Like, it'll be better for you in the end if you just refuse. And so Supersonic is to tell Starlight, it's like, well, that sounds great and all, but I want to be a part of this team. Like, I'm going to go on and I'm going to help you out, Starlight. And I'm going to be on your side. And maybe that'll kind of shift things to where it can help you out. So, because we have, of course, a flashbacking moment where we have Starlight. It seems like the other superhero girls, I don't think, are actually on this list anywhere. Yeah. Let me know in the comments below the other two girls, because I feel bad because I don't remember seeing them anywhere here. Like, I think one of the other girls is called, like, like Silver Kamikaze or something like that, or like Silver or something. And there's like a Shadow Girl also, but I don't remember exactly what their names are. Eventually, maybe when I see certain episodes, or I'll see like kind of flashbacks or something, maybe I'll know what their names were. But like they weren't really relevant to the show, sadly enough. We had the boy bander guy who is to be supersonic, who is to go on and dance his way to eventually winning this show. So, so we go on and we have Starlight, who is to have a flashback thing, and I'm also gonna get to like the flashback of uh, Grace going on and uh, having her flashback with the payback team. I'll cover that. I just wanted to get some stuff out of the way. So we had Starlight, who is to go on and be in this like superhero beauty pageant, and so she is to go on and she is to sing this Britney Spears song. I'm like, what is it with Britney Spears lately? Like, we have it to where, like, in the movie, like, Senior Year, I think I saw bits and pieces of that, where there was, like, some Britney Spears performance in that movie. Like, I didn't really care to see Senior Year because, like, this movie isn't my kind of film. So, because it was just, like, the way that they approached this movie, I was like, I would not go on and see this film. But there was like some Britney Spears performance within that movie, and I'm like, what is it with Britney Spears now? Is she having a comeback? What's going on? So Starlight is all of a sudden singing this song with Britney Spears, and she's being like kind of seductive for her age, trying to get some votes and whatever, and singing and dancing and all this stuff. So all of a sudden she goes on and wins this pageant and is to blow everyone away. But then Starlight is to have this fist in the back of her dress that she's kind of bottling up, and eventually towards the end of this episode, of episode 3, we kind of see that fist again. So now we go on and let's cover the whole Grace stuff. So eventually the boys were to all go and re-meet up with Grace, and while Grace is talking about her past and being involved with the team Payback, and at some point her meeting with uh, Black Noir, who I guess was to have like him being unmasked a lot and him like speaking to people, and I was like, okay, so we're finally getting something different from Black Noir, but maybe we'll immediately find out what was to happen for this character going on and being kind of masked here. So we go on and we have like young Gunpowder here. We have Swato, who is to be this kind of mosquito-looking superhero. We have, of course, Soldier Boy as this guy who's to kind of want to fire off this cannon, but Grace is telling him not to. And so we go on and we have Soldier Boy who is talking to Grace and is like telling her, it's like, well, hey, like you're a really attractive woman, like what are you doing here? And so Grace is going on and telling Soldier Boy, it's like, well, hey, if you're not going on and uh, and like consistently going on with Gunpowder the way you do, then like you should not go on and talk to me about anything. So about how I should like run places or run things. So we go on and find out that there is some weapon that can possibly wipe out Soups within this flashback story. And then at some point, this was to lead to the Payback team trying to go on and take out these people that were trying to infiltrate this camp and kill off a number of Grace's soldiers, as well as Payback going on and trying to like use like their powers to try to take down this infiltrate team that was to supposedly kill off Soldier Boy and grab his body and eventually like drag him off. So naturally assuming that Soldier Boy is to possibly be dead here, but then we could also make the decision that he's probably not, because he'll probably pop up at some point by the end of this season, I'm naturally assuming, because why would he go on and have at some point where Jensen Ackles was to look Grizzly Adams like, preparing himself for, of course, the boys, but then he's bizarrely just clean shaven and whatever for the rest of the show. I'm like, well, there has to be a reason for that. They probably went on and they shot the last episode first and probably went backwards, I'm assuming. So, anyways, they kind of picked and choose what scenes were to use for this show at first. But anyways, so we also had superheroes like Mindstorm and all kinds of other kind of interesting characters being used in this episode. But anyways, besides all that, so we have the Butcher who's going on and trying to hear this story, and for one reason or another, he's starting to feel sick. He's going on and eventually having some stomach issues, which is forcing him on to go to the bathroom. And so because Ryan is with Grace, we go on and we have the Butcher who is barfing, and like his heat vision is starting to like come on and off, and the Butcher is trying to weigh this out to hope that he can go on and just let this pass. So the Butcher is to make his way back, and he bumps into Ryan, and so the Butcher is talking to Ryan, and Ryan's like, well, hey, are you sick? And the Butcher's like, well, yeah, I think I just ate like some bad food. And so Ryan's just like, well, like, here's some like crackers that like my mom used to like make me eat when I was sick. And the guy's like, yeah, I never really liked eating those. And Ryan's like, yeah, me neither. We also had a point where the Butcher was to go on and have Ryan send him a video. And so the Butcher finally does watch it, and it's to be some message that Ryan's mother was to leave. And so Ryan was to take this video and make it all out of Legos. And so the Butcher is just like, oh, okay, like, so like this is kind of haunting to hear his wife's voice again. And so, but Butcher was on this video with Ryan, and Butcher was trying to be very short with Ryan, and Ryan was asking about the video, like, hey, did he watch it? And he's like, oh no, I'm sorry, like, I don't have time. So we go on, and so the Butcher is to go back and hear the rest of the story with the rest of the group. And Huey is asking Butcher, it's like, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, what alcohol or what beverage did you drink the night before? And the Butcher's like, So, by the very end of this episode, we have Huey and we have the Butcher who are kind of back together again, and they're kind of talking about how things are going right now. And so eventually Butcher is to barf all over Huey with all this like kind of green mist. And Huey's to go on like, oh my god, you just barfed all over me. And so now we have to assume that Huey can figure out that the Butcher is to be dousing himself with Compound B, and maybe the Butcher has to come clean now, and that's possibly what we might be getting at the end of this. But we also have something further going on. So at the end of this episode, we also have it where after American Heroes, they are to choose Supersonic and have him win this contest. We have Homelander going on into TV and confessing to the world that both him and Starlight are to now be lovers. And we go on and have Homelander do this whole pitch to everybody. Because come to find out, Ashley is telling Homelander that Homelander and Starlight need to somehow like be like a cohesive team and need to be really like so close to one another so they can both help one another out. And Homelander is to go on and do this whole speech about them being lovers. And so we have it, of course, where Starlight is to not go on and say a thing about this story, and she just has to forcibly go along with it because Starlight is to want to go on and take control. And so she talks to Homelander and says, like, well, hey, like, if you don't go on and do what I want, I'm going to release that footage of you on that plane. Like, do you remember that plane that Maeve had footage of? And Homelander is like, go on, release that footage. Go ahead. Like, just go on, put that footage out to the world. Like, I'm going to go on and eventually, like, I'm going to sink so low that whatever I will do will no longer matter. And so then I'm going to just turn to the dark side and just start wiping the world out. I'm just going to go on and just decide to just take New York off the map. I'm going to just destroy it. I'm going to go and find Maeve's hometown, and I'm going to kill Des Moines, and like I'm going to go on and just wipe every place out. Just go on and just do it because I can. What are you going to tell me, Starlight? What are you going to do? And then we have Starlight that's like, oh my god, like this guy needs to get killed. This guy is so beyond saving at this point. So, and like they need to come up with some way to just take out Homelander. But who knows where this season is still going to go. So we go on here and we have Frenchie who is to meet up with Sherry. So it's been a while since we've, like, it's very rare that we ended up seeing like Sherry and Frenchie together. But it's kind of interesting to have this character back into the show. And so when Frenchie is to meet up with Sherry, eventually this has Frenchie meet up with supposedly some old friends of his, where we go on, we have Frenchie who is talking to this woman and wanting Frenchie, and I think that this girl is Tessa, to be re-involved with Frenchie. And we go on and we have, of course, Frenchie who's like, no, like I'm already involved in the CIA, like I'm not going to do anything with you, like I don't care what you're going to tell me, like I have no interest. So like it seems that eventually like this girl is to probably get more involved in what Frenchie is doing, and at some points we're probably going to have an escalation of things because Frenchie has to do something other than him just going to Six Flags and all these other goofy spots and have of course Kimiko be playing on keyboards and all these kind of things and singing and dancing and whatever. So with that said, I think somehow or another we've gone on and we possibly covered most of this show, but probably not all of it. We also had the one thing where Black Noir was to say that he didn't want to wear the helmet anymore and that he wanted to just kind of go on and not have the mask anymore. So eventually he won't have to wear the mask to go on and get like free stuff or anything like that. And so we have Stan Edgar, who is also in this flashback, talking to Black Noir. And Black Noir, I guess we figure out how exactly this character was to have gotten the way he was, to where he was no longer a person who spoke or was to always wear this helmet, because eventually his face ends up getting disfigured. And unless there is eventually another Black Noir that we're not familiar of, but we have to assess, like, that's the whole reason why Black Noir is to consistently wear the helmet, is never to talk. But anyways, I think, other than that, I think most of this stuff feels covered. as I have to question that. But yeah, so with that said, we also had the moment where Huey was to go on to that adoption place for the gifted, where he was to go on and be in this spot where we had this kid who was consistently teleporting, and Huey was like, "Oh my god, like this kid keeps scaring me by him teleporting all these places." And so Huey is to meet with this girl who's at this orphanage, and so it seems that Huey is to kind of go through, and he wanted to have this USB port that is to kind of steal everything on this girl's computer so he can find out what had happened to Nada or Newman. So we go on, and so Huey is to similarly be on this list to adopt a child. And then when we have Huey, who's to meet up with Starlight after he talks to his partner back in the CIA, we have to where Starlight is kind of covering for Huey, and they're to be in this argument. But then Huey is to eventually tell Starlight that he is to be on this list to adopt a child. And Starlight is like, oh my god, seriously? So we go on, and we have Huey that is to eventually look at this past video of Nada eventually talking about her past and everything like that. So it seems that Stan Edwards was to go in and adopt Nada and eventually change her name, and it seems that Stan is to also have this other kid, and he is to read her a story, and then he ends up kind of letting her off to go on and do something. And so Stan is to take Newman and is to tell her, like, hey, maybe like I should reread you this story because maybe you need this more than she does. And so Newman is just kind of worried about what's going on, and Stan is just saying, like, well, hey, like everything will be fine. Don't worry about it. So let me pause here for a second. Okay. Well, I think that said, I'm just going to wrap this up. Los, whatever thing is usually going on, I'm going to try to wrap this up so I can go on and just put this out there because it's been a long enough video anyways. And with that said, if there's anything that I forgot about, let me know in the comments below. I'll probably get back to it within the recapping or rebuttal of the next review, because there would be probably a lot of stuff that I probably forgot from these episodes that I will go back into within the next review. So there's that. So that said, I'm just gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy. Again, let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot, specifics. I'm sure there's names that I probably forgot because I try to rush through a lot of this, or I didn't go on into much of the Soldier Boy stuff because a lot of it is just references of this character, or there's some kind of just little bits and pieces here that eventually will be added somewhere later. But I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.